Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the unsolved disappearance of Cynthia Anderson. She was a woman who vanished from her place of work 40 years ago now, and it is still not known what actually happened to her. Cynthia Jane Anderson was born on the 4th of February in 1961. She lived with her parents and siblings in Toledo, Ohio in the US. Her father was called Michael Anderson and she also had a sister called Christine, but I couldn't find her mother's name, so I don't have a clue what her mother was called. I just literally couldn't find that anywhere. If I've missed it somewhere and you guys know it, please do let me know, but I don't know, I couldn't find it. So I also couldn't find if she had any more siblings. I just know that one of her sisters, if she had more, I don't know, was called Christine. She adored her family. She spent a lot of time with them and she was brought up in a very devout Christian fundamentalist household. As she became an adult, she had loads of friends. You know, she had quite strict rules and curfews and things that she had to follow in a household. But she ended up with a boyfriend who went to the same church as she did, and you know, she had tons of friends. And she was described as being this quiet, obedient girl. She was affectionately known by those around her as Cindy. So that was like her nickname. And she never really made trouble for her parents. She was like always such a good girl. Her neighbour did actually describe her as being like this really young, attractive young woman who would catch people's attention. In 1980, when she was 20 years old, she began really struggling with these nightmares that she was having. She was having these recurrent dreams in where she would be abducted from her home by a stranger and she would actually be murdered, and she kept having them a lot. For I believe over a year she kept having these dreams, and she even, you know, went to her mum and had a chat with her mother about it. But obviously despite the dreams, she had to try and carry on with her life as best as she could. She worked as a legal secretary and she was actually planning on leaving her job as a legal secretary to go to Bible college, which was where her boyfriend was actually attending as well. And in the way of work, that probably couldn't have come sooner for Cynthia, because she was getting these weird things happening at work that she didn't really like. There was this spray message painted on like outside of a wall outside of her work, and I believe this message said, "I love you Cindy by GW." This message actually stayed on the wall for 6 months. Why they didn't try and clean it off sooner, I don't know, and that must have made it even worse for Cynthia, because you know, she's seen this sign all the time and it must have creeped her out. But they did finally get rid of it after the 6 months, and then, you know, it was just painted back over again, but this time it was bigger. So whoever painted the sign was like, oh, it didn't work last time, this time let's make it bigger. And so they painted it bigger. According to a friend, she was the only Cindy that worked on that side of the strip mall where this sign was, where the law building was. It basically seemed intentionally placed so that Cynthia would see it, and she did say that also she didn't know who this GW was. In the weeks before her disappearance, she had been getting these suspicious phone calls while she was in work, and they were really worrying her. On one occasion, a law firm client called Larry Mullins said that he was there and he watched Cynthia pick up the phone and then just hung up straight away, like, put it down. And then the phone rang again. And he said that the look on her face was that she was really scared by this call. So she's having these dreams about being abducted and murdered. She's getting these strange phone calls at work. There's a weird sign that's out on the wall with what we assume, well, it was her name, but was it really directed at her? We don't know. You know, she's going to assume that it is regardless if she's the only Cindy there. And it was really creeping her out, and she was getting more and more paranoid, understandably. The law firm, you know, to try and sort of protect her worries, they told her that she should keep the doors locked at all times, even during business hours. And they also installed this like emergency buzzer in which she could press and it would alert the nearby businesses in the strip mall that she was in trouble. Unfortunately, those precautions were not enough for Cynthia. On the 4th of August in 1981, Cynthia skipped her breakfast and she headed off to work like normal. This was at 8:30 a.m. Now, Cynthia often worked alone in the mornings, and so obviously by instructions of her boss would lock the doors. So this was, you know, one of them times she got in, she was on her own, and so she locked the front door. She was seen as late as 9:45 a.m. that day. Then at 12 p.m. her employer, attorney James Rabbit, attends the office. He notices that the door is still locked from the inside, and so he lets himself in. Once inside, he sees that the mail has been sorted into like its holdings, like it was part of Cynthia's job. It's something that she normally did before he came into work. That had all been done. The radio was still on, the lights were still on, as well as the air conditioning unit. Now, Cynthia hadn't left a note to say that she'd nipped out or anything like that, and normally she would have done. Normally, if she nips out, she would have left them a note to let them know that she'd be back or whatever. But there was no note, no nothing. Also on the desk, this book, romantic novel that she'd been reading, was open on a page. The page people find very weird that it was open on, because the page that it was on was where the protagonist was actually being abducted at knife point. And admittedly, that's kind of creepy, right? Like, she's nowhere to be seen, and then the book she's reading is going on about being abducted at knife point. Again, probably just a big coincidence, but it's still a bit creepy. Also, something she would have done when she normally leaves was put the phones on hold, which also was not done, I forgot to mention. Police were contacted. They couldn't find any signs of forced entry at all. They found her car, a 1980 Chevy Citation. It was still in the car park, but her keys and purse were nowhere to be found. Inside, there wasn't any sign of a struggle or anything like that. The button that she had for a panic button hadn't been pressed. And as I said, the door still seemed to be locked from the inside. So theoretically, how could somebody have taken her? It was weird. But on the other hand, no one thought that she would have just left there willingly. She had kind of these clear plans for her future, what she wanted to do in her life. She wanted to quit a job, go to Bible college. People really didn't think that she would have just upped and left, you know, after planning everything out that she wanted to do. Her dad Michael, though, did state that in the time before her disappearance, she appeared to be skipping meals and seemed to be focusing more on her appearance than she ever had before. And she would spend like a lot of time on her face, like doing makeup and stuff that she never normally did. So he did notice some changes in her before she disappeared. The police looked at the call log and found that after 10 a.m, none of the calls had been answered, which of course made police and everyone believe that she must have been abducted sort of just before then. Again, she was last seen at 9:45, so it must have been within those 15-minute time slot. Police looked at Cynthia's bank accounts and they looked into her social security number. She had money in her banks that hadn't been taken out. It wasn't touched, it was all still there. Her social security number wasn't used either. And after that point, Cynthia has never been seen or heard of ever again. And still, nobody knows what happened to her that day. A month later, in September of 1981, the police got a really strange phone call. It was from a woman in like a dulled, low-tone voice who was claiming that Cynthia was alive and that she was being held against her will. The officer was trying to get more details, but the woman just kept saying that she had to go. And then obviously she did go, but then a short while later she rang back and said that Cynthia was being kept in this white house, and said that the house next door was also owned by the same person. So these two houses were owned by the same person. And she said that the family who was involved in these houses were actually out of town and that it was the son that was keeping her captive. The officer on the phone asked her to give her name, but she refused to give it. And apparently she seemed really nervous. The woman never called back again after that. The police searched everywhere hoping to find this house that she had described, you know, the two houses. And they just chased every lead that they could, but they just couldn't find anything. When the police looked into the note on the wall, they apparently traced that back to a maintenance man with the same initials. He had access to the building, but they never got any concrete evidence linking him to Cynthia's abduction, murder, whatever happened to her, and no charges were ever brought against him. Apparently later on, another man did come forward and he told police that he actually wrote the "I love Cynthia" note on the wall, but said that he actually wrote it for another Cynthia, and no charges were also brought on this man either. That is all the information we have on Cynthia's case. Obviously, we have lots of theories that have sprung up from it, so we'll go over those now. Some people believe that Cynthia was abducted by somebody that was infatuated by her. Maybe this person was a culprit of the calls, and maybe they were even the culprit of the message. Maybe this person that actually came forward wasn't even the one that wrote the message, who knows? And that she was taken from her work. The thing with that though is that there were no sign of forced entry, there was no sign of a struggle, and the alarm bell wasn't rang. So because of that, people believe that maybe Cynthia actually nips out. Maybe she went to a car to pick out something out of a car, and then that was when she was grabbed and taken. And then the book being open on the page was just a very strange coincidence. Others believe the book was actually placed on that, like somebody had been stalking her and had also, you know, saw her reading this book, had got the book themselves and knew about that scene, abducted her and opened it purposefully on that page. Personally, I just believe it's a coincidence, but yeah, some people do believe that. It was also theorized that Anthony and Nathaniel Cook, who were two brothers that were actually convicted of 9 murders in Ohio, were actively killing people in the 1980s for over 16 months. However, both denied that they were ever involved in Cynthia's disappearance, and the police couldn't ever find a link between them either. Another theory is that a convicted drug dealer called Jose Rodriguez was actually involved in Cynthia's disappearance. That he had actually killed Cynthia because she overheard this drug deal. Someone that worked with the same office as her was called Richard Neller, and his client was Jose. And in 1996, they were both convicted for a drug conspiracy. So that maybe she knew something about that, and as a result, they murdered her for it. One informant actually testified to say that Jose had confessed to him that he had murdered Cynthia, whilst actually threatening Richard for representing him poorly. The judge actually ruled the admittance as unreliable, saying that there wasn't sufficient evidence to say that he was involved in Cynthia's disappearance, that Cynthia had even been kidnapped or murdered, like, at all. Because again, she could still be alive out there, nobody knows. They didn't really believe him on that. They didn't really think that he actually did kill Cynthia, and so despite those possible theories, there's no evidence ever linking it to Cynthia's disappearance. Another theory that does hold a lot of weight in the community is that Cynthia just left of her own accord. Maybe she wanted a new life. Maybe because her house was very strict and had all these rules. Again, her dad had noticed changes in her beforehand. Maybe she as a person was changing. Maybe she wanted to be more, I don't know, a woman who would wear lots of makeup and not have the strict rules to come home to, and just wanted to start a new life. And maybe she just left because of that. For me though, the money still being in a bank and a social security number not ever being touched is a big factor for me to make me think that she's no longer alive. But if you want people to believe that and you want to start again with a fresh life, leading everyone to believe that you are no longer living, wouldn't you then not touch your money in that bank and not use your social security number, because then that would just prove that you are still alive? So I guess that's like a counter for it. When you look into all the facts of the case, I would say that this theory probably makes the most sense. There was no struggle. The door was locked from the inside. And again, the changes that her dad noticed in her, I don't know. It just seems more like she disappeared of her own accord. Again, that is just my personal opinion. I do not know. Nobody knows. She might have been abducted and murdered. But I don't know. Just the way she was acting just makes me lean a bit more towards that maybe she just wanted a new life and she just went, and that was that. Cynthia's parents have both passed away, never knowing what happened to their daughter. Her mother died of cancer in 1983, and then her father died in 2008. His obituary stated that he was preceded by his daughter. So I guess that means he believed that she was deceased. I don't know. It's really heartbreaking when you look in these cases and the parents die and they never ever know what happened to their child. Like, if she is still out there living somewhere, they never got that peace of mind. And if she has been murdered or abducted and, you know, her remains are somewhere out there, they never got to bring those home and lay them to rest and bury them. They just never had that peace of mind as to what happened to their child. And it really is heartbreaking. So if you have any information about Cynthia Anderson, you know anything, please come forward. It's too late for her parents to find out, but she's still got family out there who probably would love to know what happened to her. Maybe she is out there living a new life. I guess she would now be about 60. Or was she in fact murdered? I found this case really interesting. Those strange dreams that she was having of her being abducted and murdered, and then she possibly was abducted and murdered. She had them for a year and then she suddenly vanished. It's just weird, and it's like a really strange case. But yeah, we don't know what happened to her. Please let me know your thoughts and theories on the case, you know, below. I like to see what you guys think. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you've enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Cynthia Anderson. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.